I'm here as your biology educator. Vista's learning works with an ideology of providing quality education for all. It's an online education platform where you can get an acquaintance with all the channels available and make sure that you subscribe to the channel Vista's Learning Class 11 and 12. Please do watch the session. If you find the session interesting and informative, please make sure that you click on the like as well as share the session with your friends and family members. And also make sure that you click on the bell icons as that you will get all the upcoming notifications. Now, let's move on to our present session. So in last session, where we have a discussion about the chapter Human Health and Disease, where we have discussed about what is health and the factors, dimension which has to be taken into consideration while giving a definition of the health, and what are the measures that has to be taken to maintain the health of the individual. Along with that, we also discussed about some of the common diseases which has been caused by bacteria, virus, fungi. And in continuation with the last session, let's move on to some of the common diseases that are caused by protozoans and helminthes, right? Now, so we are in continuation with the discussion of the diseases that are caused by the wide variety of organisms, bacteria, virus, fungi. So in this session, let's take a look at protozoa. And the most known disease that is caused by this protozoans is malaria. It is a disease of mankind where man has been fighting against this malaria to protect himself since centuries, since several years we can say. And here plasmodium, it's a tiny protozoan where this is a responsible protozoan. We call it as a plasmodium, and the most popular type of species of plasmodium is Plasmodium vivax. Along with so many species which is known to cause this disease, Plasmodium falciparum is known to cause malignant type of malaria. So let's look at the different types of the Plasmodium species. So different species of Plasmodium like vivax, malaria and falciparum, where we are giving importance to the falciparum as it is causative organ of malignant type of malaria, or responsible for different types of malaria, Now, let's move on to, as we already said that there are different types of malarias which has been caused, right? So here, one of the species of this plasmodium is Plasmodium falciparum, which is known to cause a malignant type of malaria which is affecting the cerebral part, and also we can find the recurrence of the fever for every 3 days. So that is what we are calling it as a malignant tertian malaria and cerebral malaria. And moving on to, it is interesting to know that it requires plasmodium. It's a parasite which is known to cause the malaria, and it requires 2 hosts to complete its life cycle. So it is interesting to know that the malarial parasite requires 2 hosts. One is human and other one is mosquitoes, and that too particularly female Anopheles mosquito. So human and mosquitoes, where to complete its life cycle, it requires 2 hosts, and for this, female Anopheles mosquito is also acting as a biological vector. Now, the female Anopheles mosquito is a vector also. This is very, very important, and it is transmitting it infectious stage of the parasite, and that is called as sporozoites. This is very, very important. Sporozoites are the infectious stage of the plasmodium, what we are calling it as a parasite, and it is involved in transmitting these sporozoites from one host to the other host. That is what we are calling it as a transmitting agent. And also we call it as a biological vector, as it being involved to complete a part of the parasite life cycle, that is plasmodium life cycle. Now, plasmodium enters the human body. See, it enters the human body as a sporozoite. This is the infectious form, infectious stage of the parasite. This is very, very important. Once sporozoites has entered there, it enters through the bite of the infected female Anopheles mosquito. So once the mosquito has been infected with the plasmodium, and these plasmodium come to the stage of sporozoites. Now the sporozoid stage of the plasmodium parasite is present in the salivary glands of the mosquito. Now that mosquito which has been infected with the plasmodium, if that mosquito which is carrying the sporozoitic stage of the parasite at its salivary glands, it comes and bites the healthy human, then along with sucking of the blood from the human, it injects this sporozoitic phase of the parasites into the bloodstream of that person. Now that human was considered as an infected human because his blood has now sporozoitic stage, infectious stage of parasite. Now look, after that what happens? Now, the parasites initially, once it enters into bloodstream, it reaches to the liver cells, hepatocytes. Once it reaches to the liver cells, hepatocytes, where it undergo division to increase its number. That is very, very essential. The number has to increase, then only the parasite will get the strength to show its effect and cause the infection. So that is what the first stage soon after entering that sporozoitic phase into the bloodstream is undergoing multiplication. It has to increase its number first. Now here, the parasite initially multiplies within the liver cells. This is very, very important. First, soon after the bite of the mosquito, the sporozoites enters into the bloodstream. From the bloodstream, through the blood circulation, it reaches to the liver cells. First spot where it reaches, that is the liver cells, what we also call as hepatocytes. And now, in the liver cells, it undergo multiplication and it leads to the increase in number of the parasite. Now, and then it attacks RBC cells. First, it is attacking liver cells, then it is attacking RBC, that is red blood cells, and it results in the rupturing of that RBC. Now, the ruptured RBC is associated with the release of the toxic substance, where these parasites convert the soluble heme form into insoluble crystalline toxic substance, and that substance is called as hemozoin. This is very, very important. So here, which is responsible for the chills, high fever, and recurring every 3 to 4 days. Every 3 to 4 days. Now, look at here. When a female Anopheles mosquito bites an infected person, these parasites enters the mosquito's body and undergo further development. Now, the RBC is having the gametophytic stage of the parasite. Whenever another mosquito come and bite that person, as his blood or her blood is full of gametophytic stage of the parasite, now that along with the blood, this gametophytic stage of the parasites also enters into the mosquito. So here is the thing, which the parasite enters the mosquito body, and there in the mosquito body, particularly at the gut part of the mosquito, the further development of this parasites takes place. The parasites there also undergo multiplication to increase its number within them to form sporozoites. Again, the infectious stage. From the gametophytic stage, it undergoes a process of fertilization, and the further development also takes place, which finally leads to the infectious stage of the parasite, and that is called as sporozoite. That are stored in the salivary glands. This happens in the gut, right? Once the sporozoites development takes place, the developed sporozoites comes from the gut of the mosquito and it reaches to the salivary glands of the mosquito. Whenever this mosquito infects another person, the cycle continues. Look at here. When these mosquitoes, These mosquitoes, in the sense, the sporozoites are present in the salivary glands of that mosquitoes. Mosquitoes bite human, the sporozoites. Sporozoites are introduced into his or her body circulation, blood circulation into the body, and thereby initiation whatever the events just now we have mentioned. Right? Now, so let's have a gist of all the events that we have discussed till now. So we start from here. Let's take a look at here, this stage. Mosquito, this is a mosquito. We can say this is first infected and it is carrying the parasite. So when the mosquito bites human, let's start here, bites another human, the sporozoites, it has been infected with the plasmodium and it is carrying the infectious stage of the parasite, and that is called as sporozoites. The sporozoites are present in that mosquito, and that mosquito which is having the sporozoites in its salivary gland, it is biting a human. So when the mosquito bites another human, sporozoites are injected into the bite. Now the sporozoites are entering into that blood circulation of the human. Now from the blood circulation, once, see, through the bite, the sporozoites enters into blood circulation, and finally it reaches the liver. In the liver, it is entering into the liver cells, that is called as hepatocytes. This is the second stage. First stage, we'll come to this stage, how the sporozoites are formed. Let's think that the sporozoites are present in the mosquito, and the sporozoites which are present in the salivary glands of the mosquito, that mosquito come and bite a human. That is the first stage. Let's take, for example, we start from here. So once the human got bite by that mosquito, the sporozoites which are present in the salivary glands now enters into the blood circulation, first thing. Now through the blood circulation, it starts reaching to the liver cell, what we call it as a hepatocyte. This is the second stage. Now the sporozoites are in the liver cell, and that liver cells are hepatocytes. Look at here, parasite that is present in the form of sporozoite. This is the diagram, directly we got it from your textbook NCERT. So just refer to the diagrams, as that the explanation will match us and you will get to understand better. Now, parasite, that is in what form the parasite is present? The parasite is present at its infectious stage, and that is called as sporozoite, right? The sporozoite reaches first liver through blood circulation. Through the blood circulation, the sporozoites reaches to the liver cells, and the liver cells are called as hepatocytes. So in the liver cell, we have this sporozoites. Now the sporozoites are in the liver cells. Now what happens? Here the parasites reproduce asexually. This is very, very important. The parasite here, it reproduces asexually and increases in number. So consider these are the liver cells. So the increase in number, it reproduces asexually, and the sporozoites, parasitic infectious stage, increases in number. Once the number increases, the liver cells, bursting of the cells and releasing into the blood. So as this number is increasing and increasing, it leads to bursting of the liver cells, and therefore it releases this parasitic form outside. Now what happened? That parasites, whatever increased in numbered parasites undergo multiplication inside the liver cells, and it increases its number, right? That huge number of the parasites starts hitting the walls of this liver cells, therefore it leads to the bursting of the liver cells. Now all the parasites comes out, reaches to the RBC. Parasites reproduce asexually here also in the RBC, and inside the RBC also, it undergo multiplication, same what it have happened in the case of liver cells, where the multiplication happens of the parasite. Same way, the parasite undergo multiplication inside the RBC cells, which leads to the bursting of the RBC cells. Here, bursting of the liver cells takes place. Coming to here, the bursting of the RBCs takes place. So bursting of the RBC cells and causes the, now here as it is leading to bursting of the RBC, that means the RBC has been, number has been decreased. Therefore, it leads to chills and fever. What are, we call it as a signs and symptoms of the fever, that is malarial fever. Causing cycles of fever and other symptoms, this released parasites infects new RBC cells. So here, the RBC cells has been infected with the parasites, right? Now, after entering, each parasite increases in number. So once the number is increased, it leads to bursting of the RBC. Whenever bursting of the RBC takes place, the number of the RBC cells are being decreased, which leads to the chills and the fevers that happens in the case of malaria. Now, the released parasites again infects healthy RBC cells. Again infects healthy RBC cells. In this way, the number of RBC cells keeps on decreasing as the infection is increasing. Now, it may infect and start infecting the number of the other RBC cells also. Then, now, sexual stage development also takes place, where gametocyte, up to here we have termed it as a sporozoites. Now, gametocytic stage, here we do find the formation of both male gametocyte and female gametocyte. So once the sexual stage happens, gametocytes develops into RBC cells. So here gametocytes development takes place in the RBC cell. So inside the RBC cell, we do find the presence of male gametophyte and female gametophyte. Now what happened? This human blood is containing female and male, both male and female gametophytic stage of parasite. Now, if this blood is sucked by another mosquito, female Anopheles mosquito, now the blood enters into the mosquito, where the entry of the male and the female gametophytic stage of the parasites also takes place, which reaches to the gut part of the mosquito. Now, this infected human blood contains gametophytic stage of parasite. Male and female gametocytes are present in the blood. Along with the blood, if it sucks, these gametocytes also enters. Now, the female mosquito takes up the gametocytes with the blood meal. Along with the blood, while the mosquito, female mosquito is sucking the blood, along with the blood, it got to get this both parasitic form of male and female gametocytes. Now, these gametocytes now enters into gut, where it leads to fertilization of the male and female gametocyte. Now here, once the gametocyte, male and female fuses, it leads to the formation, fertilization happens, and which leads to the further development. So fertilization and development takes place in the mosquito's gut, and it finally leads to the formation of infectious stage of infectious stage of parasite, and that is called as sporozoite. Now this sporozoitic stage reaches to the salivary gland of that mosquito. So mature infective stage, what we call it as a sporozoite. Sporozoites escape from the gut and it migrates and reaches to the mosquito's salivary gland. So in the mosquito's salivary gland, we do find the presence of the sporozoites. Now, this infected sporozoite containing mosquito bites again a healthy person, he is going to be infected. So this is the complete life cycle of plasmodium. So here, which we have discussed about how the host organisms, both man, human being, as well as mosquito, has been involved in completing of this life cycle of plasmodium. Right? Now, here, moving on to another type of, again, protozoan, which causes the disease, like Entamoeba histolytica is a parasite. protozoan parasite. In the large intestine, we do find the presence of this entamoeba histolytica in the large intestine of human, which causes amoebiasis, amoebic dysentery. Also it is called as amoebic dysentery. So amoebic dysentery or amoebiasis is caused by the protozoan called entamoeba histolytica. So here the symptoms of this disease includes constipation, abdominal pain, cramps, passing the stools with excess of mucus and also blood clots. We do find the presence of the blood clots in the stools that has been passed by this infected person. So, entamoeba histolytica is a protozoan which causes the disease called amoebiasis. Right? Now, moving on to here, what is a vector or carrier? That is houseflies. Houseflies acts as a mechanical carrier. It is not being involved in the part of the life cycle of the parasite. Therefore, we are not calling it as a biological vector, but it is a mechanical carrier. So, houseflies are the mechanical carriers and serve to transfer this parasite from the feces of the infected person to food and food products. It contaminates actually, and thereby the contaminating them. This infection passes from one affected individual to the healthy individual by the contamination of the water and contamination of the food that has been contaminated by the parasite, where we do find in the feces of the infected persons. So this route is what we call it as a oral route, feco-oral route. So as there is a contamination of the food and water, we need to be careful about what food we are taking and what water we are drinking. And drinking water and food contaminated by the fecal matter are the main source of the infection of entamoeba histolytica. So entamoeba histolytica do transfer from the infected individual to the healthy individual through the contaminated water and contaminated food that has been contaminated by the fecal matter that is coming from infected person. Okay. Now, next organism, that is Ascaris and Eukarya. These are the helminthes. Ascaris, the common roundworm, and Eukarya, it's a common filarial worm. These are some of the helminthes. These two examples has been given to you by your NCERT syllabus. So, which are known to cause diseases to the humans, and therefore they are considered as a pathogens to the humans. So, which are known to be as a pathogenic to human. Now, Ascaris, it is an intestinal parasite which causes the ascariasis. Ascaris is a causative organ of the disease called ascariasis, and the symptoms of this disease, which includes internal bleeding. This is very, very important. Internal bleeding and muscular pains, fever, anemic conditions, blockage of the intestinal passage, because it is causing internal bleeding. Therefore, it leads to the blockage of the internal, that means we can say it as a intestinal passage. So this is the disease that is called as ascariasis. Ascariasis is caused by the causative organ called Ascaris. Now, moving on to here, the eggs of the parasites are excreted along with the feces of the infected person. Therefore, the feces of the infected person consisting of eggs of these parasites, when it contaminate, like houseflies, they do transfer these parasites, contaminate the parasites from the feces to the food or the water. Therefore, it leads to the contamination of the drinking water as well as it leads to the contamination of the food. Now, which contaminates soil, water, plants. A healthy person acquires this infection through contaminated water, vegetables, fruits. So it is very, very essential to maintain the hygienic conditions. Both personal hygiene as well as public hygiene is very, very essential to eliminate this transmission, infection, right? Now, moving on to There are different types of species which are known. Eukaryaria, Eukaryaria browncrafti, Eukaryaria malayi. Eukaryaria browncrafti and Eukaryaria malayi are filarial worms. So just now we discussed about the ringworm, and here it causes slowly, it develops into chronic inflammation, swelling of the limbs, inflammation of the organs in which they live for many years. Usually the lymphatic vessels of the lower limbs, means legs, and the disease is called as elephantiasis or filariasis. Why we are calling it as a elephantiasis? Because the lower limb will get to the shape of an elephant leg. Due to that much of inflammation, and that is chronic inflammation we can see in the case of the lower limbs, which look like an elephant leg. That is what this disease is characterized as, the elephantiasis, otherwise called as filariasis. Now moving on to, and even in this case, the genital organs are also often affected, where it leads to change in the shape, total change in the shape. So, and the pathogens are transmitted to the healthy person through the bite which was given by the female mosquito vectors. So, here we can say that these are the diseases that comes through the contamination and also through the vectors. Now, maintaining of both public as well as personal hygiene is very, very essential. Look at here, maintenance of the personal as well as public hygiene is very important for prevention as well as control of these infectious diseases. Like maintaining personal hygiene, which includes keeping the body clean, consumption of the clean drinking water, clean food, clean vegetables, and safe fruits. Like all this has to be washed properly, cooked properly, then only we can get rid of the contamination. As these diseases are mainly passing through the contaminated food, water, fruits, vegetables, it's very, very ideal to practice the hygienic conditions by washing properly, by cleaning properly before we are taking food or drinking water. Now, moving on to the public hygiene, it is as important as the maintenance of the personal hygiene, which includes proper disposal of the waste and excreta, because most of the diseases are transmitting through the fecal-oral route. So, fecal-oral route, where the eggs of the parasites or the parasitic infectious stage do present in the feces of the infected person, that may come and contaminate our food or the water by the house flies or by other vectors. So it is very, very important that the proper disposal of the wastes as well as the excreta is very important, and it leads to the proper maintenance of the public hygiene as well as personal hygiene. And periodic cleaning, disinfection of the water reservoirs, pools, cesspools, tanks, and it's better to avoid the stagnant water here and around the residential areas, and observing the standard practices of hygiene in public catering, where these stagnant waters or the pools or water reservoirs are the places which provides a good favorable conditions, moistures for the development of the egg, what we call it as a larval stages. So these mosquitoes will act as a vectors, and therefore even the proper disposal of the waste as well as excreta is essential to eliminate some of the infections that is caused through the route called as fecal-oral route. Now, these measures are particularly essential where the infectious agents are transmitted through the food water. What are they? Typhoid, amoebiasis, ascariasis. Just now we discussed all these are through the contamination of the food, water, vegetables. Now, in case of this, we can say it as a food-borne diseases, water-borne diseases. And here, this is a airborne diseases. In case of airborne diseases like pneumonia, which is caused by Streptococcus pneumonia, and common flu, which is caused by rhinoviruses, In addition to above measures, close contact with the infected person, as it is a airborne disease, we have to avoid the close contact with the infectious person or thereby belongings should be avoided, as these are the infections which are caused by the air, and these are waterborne and foodborne. Now, for diseases such as malaria and filariasis that are transmitted through the vectors, insects, particularly mosquitoes, where the most important measure is to control or eliminate the vectors and their breeding places like stagnant waters, pools, water reservoirs. Now, here these can be achieved by avoiding stagnation of water. This is very, very important. Stagnation of water in and around residential areas, and also regular cleaning of household coolers, because in the coolers we do find the presence of the stagnant water that has to be regularly cleaned up such that we can avoid the coming up of the mosquitoes into the houses. And using of mosquito repellents, using of mosquito nets, and also introducing fishes which feeds on the larva of the mosquito, and that is called as gambusia. These are the fishes, gambusia are the fishes in the ponds that feed on the mosquito larvae. And also spraying of this disinfectants, spraying of insecticides in the ditches, drainages areas where the stagnant water is more spams. So these are all the measures that we can take to avoid and to control the vectors, thereby increasing chances of healthiness and decreasing the chances of infection. Now, in addition to this, doors and windows should be provided with a wire mesh to prevent the entry of the mosquitoes. These are all the general practices each and every house has to practice to eliminate the entry of the vectors, and such preventions have become more important, especially in the light of the recent widespread incidents of the vector-borne Aedes mosquitoes diseases like dengue, chikungunya in many parts of the India, right? Now, the advancements made in the biological sciences have armed us to effectively deal with many of the infectious diseases by strengthening our immunization by means of vaccination. We already know the immune system is a defense system which provides the chance to be healthy by fighting against, by producing the antibodies against the antigens that we already know. And we are strengthening our immune system by giving a different dosages, whether they be first doses or second doses of the viruses, of the vaccines, to fight against the different range of organisms, starting from bacteria, virus, fungi. Like different vaccinations are made available to decrease the infections rate. The use of vaccines, immunization programs have enabled us to completely eradicate a deadly disease called smallpox. Smallpox has been completely eradicated. Now, a large number of other infectious diseases like polio, diphtheria, pneumonia, tetanus have been controlled to the large extent by the use of these vaccines. Biotechnology is at the edge of making available newer and safer vaccines. There is no side effects. They are working to reduce the side effects of this vaccine and to produce a more efficient, effective vaccines to decrease the rate of infections. And discovery of the antibiotics and various other drugs that have enabled us to effectively treat the infectious diseases. So this is how we can say the diseases, common diseases. This is the overlook of the common diseases that has been caused by the protozoans and helminthes. In last class, we have discussed about the common diseases that are caused by the bacteria, virus, fungi, and in this class, we discussed about the protozoans and helminthes, and also have a discussion about the life cycle of the plasmodium vivax, right? So this is for the today's session. In coming up session, we'll discuss about the immunity. Right? If you find the session interesting, please do find, like and share this session with your friends and family members, and also click on the bell icon such that you will get the all upcoming notifications. Keep learning with We Learning. All the very best from the team Vista's Learning.